The pain. No one saw you wake up and feel it again. That invisible weight pressing down on your chest. No one else can see it, but you carry it through every moment, every breath. It's not just sadness. It's not just exhaustion. It's something deeper, a quiet ache, a silent scream. And still, you get up. Still, you show up. They call you weak because they don't see the storm inside. They don't know how hard it is to move when your mind is drowning. They don't know what it takes to smile when your soul feels like it's breaking. But you do it anyway, because somewhere deep inside, there's a tiny flicker of strength. And that flicker, it keeps you going. You've been through things. No one knows. Maybe it was heartbreak. Maybe it was betrayal. Maybe it was the kind of loneliness that wraps itself around your throat. You've had days where you didn't want to wake up, nights where you begged the darkness to end you, but you're still here. That is not weakness. That is survival. That is resilience in its rawest form. You were never taught how to heal. No one sat you down and said, "This is how you rebuild yourself." So you figured it out. In silence, in pieces, in pain. You made it through moments that felt unbearable. You kept walking, even when the path was covered in thorns. And you did it alone. That's the hardest part, isn't it? The loneliness. Everyone sees your smile, but no one sees the weight behind it. They say, "You're strong," without understanding what that strength costs. Because being strong isn't about never breaking. It's about choosing to rebuild again and again. You've cried in bathrooms. You've sat in your car, gripping the steering wheel, trying to breathe. You've stared at ceilings, wondering why it hurts so much. And yet, when morning came, you stood up. You went to work. You faced the world. You lived. That is not weakness. That is courage wrapped in exhaustion. You didn't collapse. You bent, but didn't break. You screamed silently, but kept walking. This chapter of your life, the one filled with invisible wounds, it's not your shame. It's your strength. And even if no one ever told you this before, hear it now. You were never weak. You were healing. You were fighting a war inside, and you didn't even have the words to describe the battlefield. But you stayed, and that means everything. So maybe today you don't feel okay. Maybe the pain still lingers. That's all right. Because healing isn't loud. It's not glamorous. It's quiet, messy, real. And you are healing. You are becoming someone stronger than you've ever been. Not in spite of your pain, but because of it. The mirror lied to you. There were days when you looked into the mirror and didn't recognize the person staring back. You saw tired eyes, a heavy face, a body that felt foreign, not because you changed, but because your spirit was drowning. The mirror didn't reflect your soul. It only showed the damage. It never told the truth about your strength. You thought you were broken, but you were really just carrying too much, too many memories, too many scars, too many words left unsaid. And somewhere along the way, you started believing that pain was your identity. But let's be clear about something. The mirror lied. It never told you about the nights you survived in silence. It never captured the battles you fought behind closed doors. It never showed the resilience in your heart. Because mirrors only reflect the surface, and your strength lives far deeper than that. They told you to just be positive, to get over it, to move on, as if healing were a light switch you could flip off and on. But what they didn't understand, what they never saw, is how much of your healing has been invisible. You've picked yourself up more times than you can count. You've held yourself together when you wanted to fall apart. You've smiled while carrying grief in your chest like a secret. That's not weakness. That's not failure. That's survival in its most sacred form. You've become so good at hiding your pain that even you started believing it wasn't real. But it is. It always was. And it's okay to admit that. It's okay to say, I'm not okay, without apologizing for it. It's okay to be tired, to need rest, to not have all the answers, because you were never supposed to be perfect. You were supposed to be real. And being real means feeling. It means breaking. It means healing in the dark when no one claps for you. You gave too much to people who gave you so little. You stayed loyal in places that didn't deserve your presence. You fought to be seen and still felt invisible. But you kept loving. You kept showing up. You were not too much. You were not unlovable. You were not a burden. You were someone, learning to love yourself in a world that taught you how to hate your reflection. But here's what they don't tell you. Healing doesn't look like sunshine. It looks like tears. It looks like journaling at 2 a.m., like deep breaths in bathroom stalls, like saying no for the first time and meaning it, like looking in the mirror and saying, I deserve better, I deserve peace. You're not the person the world tried to break. You're the person who chose to rise. You're the one who finally sees that the mirror never held the truth. Your heart did. And now, you're starting to remember who you are. Not the reflection, not the version they labeled, but the real you. The one who is healing. The one who is becoming. So next time you look into the mirror, don't search for what's wrong. Look for what's surviving. Look for what's growing. Because the mirror may lie, but your journey never will. Your heart was never weak, just wounded. There's a difference between a weak heart and a wounded one. A weak heart gives up, but a wounded heart, it fights to keep beating even when the world is trying to silence it. And your heart? It's been through hell, but it never gave up on you. Not once. You felt it. That heavy ache in your chest, like your heart was screaming but no one could hear, like it was begging for rest. But you had to keep going. You smiled. You showed up. You kept walking with wounds that no one else could. See? That's not weakness. That's bravery. Because loving after being hurt, that's a kind of courage most people never understand. You gave your heart to people who didn't protect it. You trusted when you had every reason not to. You forgave when it would have been easier to walk away. You chose empathy over ego. You chose love over bitterness. And yes, it cost you. It left you bleeding in places no one could see. It made you question if your softness was a mistake. But let me tell you something no one ever told you loud enough. Your softness is not a flaw. It's your superpower. You feel deeply because you were made to care. You hurt deeply because you were made to love. And yes, the world took advantage of that. They mistook your kindness for weakness. They didn't see that your open heart was a battlefield. And every beat was a declaration of resilience. You see, the strongest hearts aren't the ones that never break. They're the ones that break open and still keep loving. They still believe. They still hope. Your heart has been bruised, battered, abandoned, but it's still beating, still trying, still showing up for life, even when it's hard. That's not weakness. That's holy strength. And I know there were moments you wanted to shut it all down, to close your chest, to stop feeling, to stop hurting. But you didn't. You stayed open. You stayed honest. You stayed human. That's what makes you different, not perfect, not unbreakable, but whole in your own becoming. You don't need to be colder. You don't need to be tougher. You just need to be free. Free to feel without shame. Free to cry without apology. Free to say, this hurt me, and not be seen as dramatic. Free to honor your heart, not hide it. Because your heart is not a liability. It's your lighthouse. It's what kept you alive when everything else fell apart. It's the reason you still care, still create, still connect. So don't let this world convince you to shut it down. Don't let pain become your prison. You're not fragile. You're feeling. You're not too emotional. You're awake. You're not weak. You're healing. And healing takes time. It takes space. It takes 1,000 broken heartbeats that somehow still form a rhythm. Your heart deserves peace. It deserves to be held the way it holds others. Fully, fiercely, gently. So today, place your hand on your chest and thank it, not just for surviving, but for loving through the storm. Because your heart was never weak. It was just waiting for you to realize how strong it truly is. You were not meant to stay silent. There was a time you learned silence not as peace, but as survival. You bit your tongue. You swallowed your truth. You convinced yourself that staying quiet meant staying safe. But silence is heavy, isn't it? It grows inside you like a stone, pressing against your chest, weighing down your voice until even your thoughts feel like screaming into a void. You weren't born to be invisible. You weren't made to shrink just to fit someone else's comfort. You have a voice, not just vocal cords, but a fire, a truth, a story that was never meant to be buried. You see, when you were told to stay quiet, what they really meant was, don't disrupt the illusion. Don't challenge what's broken. Don't express your pain. Don't demand more than crumbs. But silence doesn't make you noble. It makes you disappear. And you've already been erased too many times. You've had moments where your truth tried to crawl out, but fear pushed it back down. You didn't want to be labeled too much, too emotional, too honest. But what if your too much is exactly what this world needs? What if your words are the medicine someone else has been waiting to hear? Every time you silenced yourself, you betrayed a little piece of your becoming. Not because you were weak, but because you were scared. And it's okay to admit that. But you're not there anymore. You're not that version of you who needed to hide. You're not that person who had to play small just to stay safe. You're becoming someone else, someone braver, louder, more whole. You don't have to scream to be powerful. You just have to speak. With truth. With intention. With the audacity to believe your voice matters, because it does. You matter. Your story matters. Even the messy parts, especially the messy parts. Speak about your fears. Speak about your dreams. Speak about what you lost, what you loved, what you're still trying to forgive. Say it out loud, even if your voice shakes, even if no one claps, even if it's just for you. Because every time you speak your truth, you take your power back. No more apologizing for needing to be heard. No more shrinking in rooms that weren't built for your light. No more rehearsing silence to make others comfortable. This is your life, your volume, your terms, and don't worry about being perfect. Your voice doesn't need polish. It needs honesty. Let it crack. Let it tremble. Let it rise. Because the world doesn't need more echo chambers. It needs real. It needs raw. It needs you. So open your mouth. Say the thing you've been carrying for years. Tell your story like it deserves to be heard. Because it does. You are not here to be silent. You are here to be seen, to be known, to be felt. And when you finally speak, when you stop asking for permission to exist out loud, you'll realize your voice was never the problem. Your silence was just the cage. Now it's time to set yourself free. This pain was not your fault. Read this carefully. The pain you carry is not your fault. Let that sink in. Not everything that broke you was because of something you did. Not every wound you hide was earned. Not every burden you carry belongs to you. You were just there, young, trusting, open-hearted. You gave love without keeping score. You forgave too quickly. You believed people when they said they cared. And some of them hurt you anyway. They left you with scars and shame, and then somehow made you believe it was all on you. That if you had just tried harder, loved better, been quieter, smarter, less needy, they would have stayed. They would have treated you right. But listen closely. Their damage is not your responsibility. You did not deserve the neglect, the betrayal, the abandonment. You were never too much. They were too little to hold you. That pain, it didn't begin with you. It came from their own brokenness, their fear, their unhealed wounds projected onto you. And somehow, you carried it. You held it close, like it was yours to fix. But you are not here to be a dumping ground for other people's darkness. You were a child in places where you needed protection. And instead, you were handed chaos. You were a teenager craving direction, but found silence and disapproval. You became an adult without a map, just trying to survive storms you didn't start. And yet, here you are, still standing, still breathing, still choosing to heal. That is strength. That is resilience. That is proof that the pain didn't win. You did. You've spent years blaming yourself for things that were never yours to carry. It's time to let that go. You don't need to keep explaining why you're hurting. You don't need to keep apologizing for how you learned to cope. Crying in silence, shutting people out, second-guessing every move. It was survival, not weakness. You were just trying to protect a heart that was constantly under threat. But now you get to choose again. You don't have to wear the guilt like a second skin. You don't have to carry the shame like it's a punishment for being human. Forgive yourself for what you didn't know. Forgive yourself for loving people who couldn't love you back. Forgive yourself for trusting when you should have walked away. You are not broken. You are healing. And healing means unlearning every lie you believed about your worth. You are not hard to love. You are not a burden. You are not dramatic, too sensitive, or weak. You were wounded. That's all. But wounds can become wisdom, and pain can become purpose when you stop blaming yourself for being hurt. You have cried in the dark. You have whispered prayers no one heard. You have questioned if you'd ever feel whole again. But look at you. You're still reaching, still rising, still refusing to disappear. This pain was never your fault, but your healing. That's your revolution. Take your power back, one piece at a time, not because you owe anyone anything, but because you owe it to yourself. You didn't break you, but you will rebuild you. And this time, you won't need to apologize for shining too brightly. Rebuilding begins with self-compassion. You've survived the fall. You've stood up from the wreckage. Now comes the quiet part, the rebuilding. And it doesn't begin with strength. It begins with compassion for yourself. Real healing doesn't start with some grand transformation. It begins with the smallest act of mercy, being kind to the person in the mirror. You've beaten yourself up long enough. For not knowing better, for staying too long, for reacting, for breaking down, for not handling it the way others expected. But here's a truth most never say out loud. Healing is not pretty. It's messy. It's silent battles no one claps for. It's learning to sit with feelings you spent years running from. It's falling apart and piecing yourself back together with trembling hands. And through it all, you don't need judgment. You need grace. Start with this. Talk to yourself the way you'd speak to someone you love. Would you tell them they're pathetic for crying? Would you shame them for needing time? Would you mock their fears or dismiss their pain? No. You'd hold them. You'd remind them they're doing their best. You'd make space for their mess. So why not offer the same to yourself? You've been conditioned to believe that tough love is the answer. That discipline matters more than gentleness. That healing means constantly pushing through. But here's the truth. Self-compassion is not weakness. It is the soil where real change begins to grow. You don't bloom through cruelty. You bloom through care. Let yourself rest without guilt. Let yourself feel without rushing to fix. Let yourself heal at your own pace, not the timeline someone else created. Yes, you've made mistakes. You've hurt people. You've made choices you're not proud of. But guess what? That makes you human, not unworthy. Your story isn't ruined because of the chapters you wish you could erase. If anything, those chapters make your comeback even more powerful. You've been strong in survival. Now it's time to be strong in softness. There is strength in saying, "I'm not okay." There is strength in crying when it hurts. There is strength in asking for help without shame. You are not a machine. You are not a project to be fixed. You are a soul that deserves tenderness. It's okay to have days where you feel like you're back at the beginning. It's okay if your progress doesn't look linear. Some days, self-love is getting out of bed. Other days, it's turning off your phone and breathing. And sometimes, it's just whispering to yourself, "I'm doing the best I can." That whisper matters, because every time you choose compassion over criticism, you reclaim a part of yourself that was lost in the pain. You build new foundations not from perfection, but from presence. You begin to trust again, not just in others, but in your ability to show up for yourself. The rebuilding doesn't require that you have it all figured out. It just asks that you stay. Stay with yourself. Through the doubts, the fear, the relapses, the silence. Because the version of you who's coming isn't just healed, they're whole. And that version will look back and thank you for not giving up, for being patient, for loving them even when it was hard. So start there. Start with kindness. Because self-compassion isn't the end of healing. It's the beginning of becoming. You are not alone in this battle. You felt like you're walking through life alone, surrounded by people, yet completely unseen. You've sat in rooms full of laughter while your soul whispered for help. But listen closely. You are not alone. Not now. Not ever. There are others who've felt the heaviness in their chest at 2 a.m., others who've held back tears in public and cried on the bathroom floor, others who've questioned their worth, their place in the world, their ability to keep going. You're not the only one who's struggled to get out of bed. You're not the only one who's smiled while breaking inside. You're not the only one who's felt the unbearable weight of silence. There are people just like you, fighting invisible battles with loud hearts. And even if you haven't met them, their stories are stitched with the same thread of pain and hope. So breathe. You're part of something bigger than your suffering. Healing doesn't happen in isolation. We were never meant to carry our burdens alone. Sometimes the most powerful step you can take is to simply reach out. Not for solutions, not for fixing, but for connection, for presence, for someone to say, "I see you, I hear you, I've been there too." You don't need a crowd. You need one safe voice. One soul who reminds you that your pain isn't too much, that your mess doesn't make you unlovable, that your brokenness isn't the end of your story. But here's the thing. Sometimes that voice doesn't come from outside. Sometimes you must become that voice for someone else, because there's someone out there right now wishing they could hear the words you need for yourself. So be what you needed. Be the friend, the listener, the soft place to land. Not just for others, but for you too. You don't have to explain your pain to be worthy of love. You don't have to be healed to deserve belonging. You don't have to earn your right to be supported. You've been conditioned to be self-sufficient, to not bother anyone, to be strong, quiet, independent. But strength isn't silence. Strength is saying, "I need help." Strength is allowing others to witness your darkness without shame. Let people in. Let them see you raw. Let them hold you, not fix you. Let them remind you that you're still human, still worthy, still here. It's okay to ask for a hand. It's okay to not be the strong one today. It's okay to need someone else to carry part of your load. Because healing, at its core, is a collective act. You weren't meant to do this alone. And you never truly were. Even in your most isolated moments, someone has walked a similar path. Someone understands the ache you've struggled to name. Someone has survived what you're barely enduring. And if they did, you can too. Connection doesn't erase pain. but it softens it. It reminds you, you are seen, you are heard, you are not broken beyond repair. This is your reminder. Your story matters, your presence matters, and someone, somewhere, is grateful you're still here. So keep reaching, keep opening, keep walking, not alone, but side by side with every soul who's ever fought their way back to life. Together, we rise. Together, we heal. Your past does not define. Your story is filled with chapters you don't often speak about. Moments you replay quietly in your mind. Mistakes you wish you could erase. Pain that still echoes, even after all this time. But here's the truth you need to hear today. Your past is not who you are. It shaped you, yes, but it does not define you. You are not the version of yourself who was at their weakest. You are not the one who fell apart. You are not the decisions made from fear, loneliness, or desperation. Those moments, they were real. They mattered, but they were not the final sentence of your story. They were commas, pauses, lessons. You've carried guilt long enough. You've worn shame like a second skin. But guilt is not a life sentence. Shame is not your identity. What you went through wasn't a sign of your failure. It was a sign of your humanity. And sometimes the most human thing we can do is fall apart, just to find the pieces worth rebuilding. Stop letting your past chain you to a version of yourself you've already outgrown. You're not who you were, not even close. You've survived storms that tried to bury you. You've walked through fire and come out the other side. You've grown roots in places that once broke you. You've changed. And that change deserves recognition. You are allowed to forgive yourself. You are allowed to move forward. You are allowed to write a new chapter. One where you are more than what happened to you. Don't let the memory of pain dim the possibility of joy. Don't let the echoes of your past drown out the whispers of your future. Yes, you made choices you regret. Yes, you endured things you didn't deserve. But regret does not have to be a punishment. It can be a teacher, a doorway, a reminder of how far you've come. You are not the broken child. You are not the angry teenager. You are not the overwhelmed adult who didn't know what else to do. You are the version of yourself that kept going. The one who said, maybe tomorrow will be better, even when today felt unbearable. The one who showed up again and again, despite the weight. You didn't just survive your past. You transformed it. Every scar you carry, it's not a mark of damage. It's a medal of resilience. You've taken your pain and turned it into perspective. You've turned breakdowns into breakthroughs. You've learned what matters and what never did. So stand tall, not in spite of your past, but because of it. Your history doesn't limit you. It proves you can evolve. It proves you can rise. You don't need to erase where you've been. You just need to stop believing that it decides where you're going. You have the power to rewrite the narrative, to make peace with the old pages and start fresh. This chapter, this moment, is yours to claim. So write boldly, love loudly, live unapologetically. You are not your mistakes. You are not your trauma. You are not your history. You are who you choose to become, today, tomorrow, and every day after that. The weight you carry is proof. You've grown. There's a weight you carry that few people can see. It's not the kind of weight that bends your back, and it's the kind that settles quietly on your soul. A heaviness made of memories, responsibilities, unspoken grief, and all the things you've survived without applause. Some days, you carry it, gracefully. Other days, it crushes you in silence, and yet, you still rise. That weight? It's not weakness. It's proof. Proof that you've endured what others couldn't imagine. Proof that you've walked through moments that threatened to break you, and you didn't run. You stayed. You stood your ground. You learned how to hold pain without letting it destroy your hope. People won't always understand that kind of strength, because the kind you carry isn't loud. It doesn't demand attention. It doesn't scream for recognition. But it's there, real, raw, and unwavering. You've grown stronger not because everything got easier, but because you stopped waiting for easy. You've accepted that healing doesn't come with a finish line, that grief doesn't follow a timeline, that forgiveness, especially for yourself, takes time. You've learned how to carry what hurt you without letting it control you. You didn't just survive, you grew. Even when it was inconvenient, even when it was lonely, even when no one clapped for you, even when all you wanted was a break and all life gave you was another test, you grew. And growth isn't always pretty. Sometimes it looks like tears you hide in the shower. Sometimes it looks like choosing not to text the person who broke you. Sometimes it looks like waking up and choosing to try again, when yesterday almost made you quit. So if today feels heavy, let it. You don't need to pretend you're okay all the time. You don't need to shrink your pain to make others comfortable. You're allowed to feel the weight of everything and still move forward. Because even with all that on your back, you're still walking. You're still showing up, still breathing, still becoming. And that is remarkable. The world might tell you to let go, to move on, to forget. But maybe the goal isn't to forget the weight. Maybe it's to learn how to carry it differently, more gently, with grace, with compassion for yourself. Because strength isn't just about pushing through. It's also about knowing when to rest, when to feel, when to let someone help you carry the weight for a while. You don't need to be everything for everyone. You just need to be here, for yourself. You've earned the right to slow down, to breathe, to feel proud. This version of you, the one carrying scars and stories, is powerful beyond words. So don't let anyone tell you that the weight makes you weak. It makes you real. It makes you grounded. It makes you human. And above all, it makes you ready, ready to rise even higher, ready to love even deeper, ready to live, not in spite of the weight, but because of what it's made you. You are not done yet. Your light is just beginning. This is not the end. Even if it feels like you've been through every storm, even if you're tired in places no one can see, even if you've cried more in silence than you've spoken out loud. This is not where your story ends, because you didn't come this far to just come this far. Every scar you carry, every ache in your chest, every battle you faced alone, they all led you here. To this moment, to this breath, to this quiet realization, you are still here. And that matters, because being here means something is still unfolding. Something in you is still blooming. Something the world hasn't seen yet, but desperately needs. You've walked through so much darkness, and yet you never lost your light. It dimmed, maybe, flickered, cracked, flicked off and on like a dying bulb, but it never went out. And now, it's growing again. Not because life suddenly became easy, but because you finally chose to believe in your own resilience. Because somewhere between all the breakdowns and rebuilds, you learned that hope doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers. A soft voice that says, keep going. You're not done yet. Maybe no one saw the nights you begged for relief. Maybe they didn't notice when you chose not to give up. Maybe they'll never understand how hard it was just to be okay. But you know, and that's enough. You've rebuilt yourself from ruins, piece by painful piece. You've let go of versions of yourself that were never truly you. You faced parts of your past that others would have buried forever. And yet, you didn't shrink. You expanded into someone softer, wiser, stronger. Now, your heart holds more compassion. Your eyes see deeper. You don't just walk through life, you feel it fully. You've stopped running from yourself. You've started coming home to your own breath, your own truth, your own power. So if the world ever tries to convince you that you're behind, that you're too broken, too late, too lost, look at everything you've carried. You didn't lose yourself. You met yourself. In every shattered moment, you found new parts of your soul. In every goodbye, you made room for something more true. And in every painful silence, you heard your inner voice grow louder. That voice is your guide now, and it says, you were never too far gone. You were never too weak. You were never beyond saving. You were always becoming. So don't stop now. There is more love waiting for you. More healing. More laughter. More mornings where you wake up without the weight. More nights where peace isn't a stranger anymore. You've tasted darkness. Now it's time to live in your light. Because your light, your story, your voice is exactly what someone else out there needs to hear. Keep going. Because you are not done yet. You're just beginning.